We find a brief account in Genesis chapter 6 that is easily one of the most enigmatic entries in all the Bible. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children unto them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. So who were the Nephilim? For a clue, we'll have to see who the sons of God are. The term sons of God in Hebrew is Bene HaElohim, meaning a direct creation of God. We call them angels. The term Nephilim is often translated as giants, and although they were giants, the true meaning is the fallen ones. This comes from the root word nephil, which means to fall or to be cast down. These men of renown, or Nephilim, would become infamous throughout the world. From the Greek Titans to the Hindu heroes of the Mahabharata, every ancient culture wrote stories about them. The book of Jude describes the fate of the angels that sinned by leaving their first habitation and pursuing unnatural fornication. While the book of 2 Peter also provides a link to these angels that sinned with the days of Noah. God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment. He did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly. Before this turns into an episode of Ancient Aliens and we ask who built the ancient monuments, a question we probably should be asking at this point, we can be confident in the biblical account and what it tells us. Strange as it may sound, at some point in prehistory, a group of fallen angels rebelled against God. These sons of God engaged in some mischief with human women that resulted in strange hybrid beings known as Nephilim. These offspring of the fallen angels wrought so much violence and corruption upon the face of the earth that it resulted in an intervention from God himself. That intervention was the flood. At this point in the biblical story, nearly 17 centuries have passed since Adam and Eve, and the human race has increased rapidly, but so did evil, corruption, and violence. The Creator who had given life in the first chapters of Genesis, here in chapter 6, concludes that the wickedness of humanity was so great that he would take away all the life he had made on the face of the earth. The means of destruction would be a worldwide flood. Yet there was one man who had found favor with God, Noah. Noah was a righteous and blameless person who was perfect in his generations and walked with God. God chose to save Noah and his family from his wrath against evil in the world. Noah's task was preserving all species of land animals and birds by taking them aboard a massive barge to survive the deluge. And by faith, Noah did exactly as God instructed and built the ark. The dimensions of the ark were 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. The ark had a deck area of 96,000 square feet, spread over 3 massive levels. The barge was coated with pitch inside and out to ensure watertightness and preservation. The displacement or capacity of a vessel of these dimensions has been estimated at 40,300 tons. This makes the ark comparable in size to the HMS Titanic. And finally, the ark featured a single door on its side to collect its precious cargo. The raging waters kept rising for 40 days, and the ark floated high above the hills and mountains. When the waters finally stopped rising, Noah, his family, and the many pairs of animals faced a long wait for the waters to go down. After nearly a year since the flood began, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat in modern-day Turkey. Noah released a number of birds to determine whether or not the waters were low enough to leave the ark. When a dove returned with an olive branch, he knew the time was near. A week later, when the same dove left and didn't return, Noah knew this was the news he'd been waiting for. Finally, after 370 days in the ark, the waters had receded, and Noah and his family and all the animals exited the ark. God made an everlasting covenant with Noah and all living creatures. He declared that never again would he destroy the earth in a flood. The rainbow in the sky would be the sign of the covenant, a reminder that God will keep his promise. The following episode is significantly more important than its length suggests. The narrative of the Tower of Babel occurs a few hundred years after the flood. It acts as the climax to the account of early mankind found in Genesis, or what we call prehistory. The geographical setting is a plain in the land of Shinar, otherwise known as Babylon. At face value, we read the Tower of Babel as a tale of hubris, defying God's command to spread out over the face of the earth. Instead, a unified humanity decides to gather all its resources and build a great city with a symbol of autonomy in the form of a great tower that will reach the heavens. Humans see themselves as determining and establishing their own destiny without any reverence for the Lord. The Babel story also served as a polemic against Mesopotamian mythology. Eridu Genesis, a fragmentary text found at Ur, Nippur, and Nineveh, describes the goddess Nintur's calling for humanity to build cities and to congregate in one place. Her desire, according to this text, is that humans be sedentary and not nomadic. God demands just the opposite, so that the earth would become populated. The Babel account ends when God comes down to deal with humanity by confusing their languages, resulting in their dispersal upon the face of the earth. Below the surface, however, we're witnessing the conflict being established for the rest of the Bible. God becomes so frustrated with humanity that he gives the people what they want. Deuteronomy 32 tells us, "The people are scattered and their borders are assigned according to the number of the sons of God." Angels. Each nation is assigned to specific members of the heavenly host as placeholders. God has dispossessed humans and divorced them. The peoples of the earth are split up and given sons of God to rule over them. We know from Psalm 82 that this divine council fails in their responsibility as the peoples begin to worship their heavenly representatives as gods themselves. In the following chapters of the Bible, God calls on Abraham, and through Abraham the nation of Israel will be established and act as a conduit for the rest of the world to worship the one true God if they choose to do so. It is through Abraham that all nations will be blessed. The world versus Israel starts here, at this very plain in Babylon. The Tower of Babel incident frames the context of the rest of the Old Testament and the New. "And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Through the Messiah, Jesus Christ, God will move to take back all of the nations, ignoring the boundaries of the divine council to regather his human family.